The Rams suffer their most heartbreaking regular season loss in the Sean McVay era. What needs to change? That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramily, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Rams, your daily podcast covering your Los Angeles Rams. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're also available on YouTube, so if you haven't yet, do us a huge favor, join the party. Lots of new subscribers, lots of new viewers, lots of new listeners lately. So make sure you're locked in. Hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and if you want to support every single episode, hit the like button, drop a comment, and write us a review. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. I've covered LA sports for over a decade, 24/7 sports, Bleacher Report, SI, Dodgers Nation. As always, I'm joined by the Rams pre, half, and post-game show host for the Rams flagship radio station. Pretty sure that pre and half were good, but the post-game show probably wasn't as fun yesterday for this man.
Yeah, it was the most caller-driven post-game show we've ever had in my time hosting the Rams since they've come back to Los Angeles. What a disaster. What a complete and utter mess.
Can't wait to talk about it. You can follow him, the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers, at Travis Rogers. And on today's episode, we are breaking down what went wrong yesterday in the Rams' collapse. As Travis said, their disaster of a loss in Philly, and 5 things that need to change in the plays that killed the Rams in the second half. But first, this episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, Travis. So this one, we will get right into it. I think we know the good. We talked about it on the squad show. We talked about the good was great, really, in the first half, other than the fact that you just couldn't capitalize in the red zone like you needed to. You go 1 for 4 in the red zone. In this one, Matthew Stafford missed some throws he usually makes. But the first thing I want to talk about in this one, in the second half, is what is the common criticism for Sean McVay? It is always, he doesn't go for the throat when they have the lead. He doesn't put teams away. He's too conservative in big spots. Why did you try to hit a grand slam home run with Devontae Adams on 3rd and 1 in the fourth quarter, and then you miss it on 4th down where you don't get the first down with Kyron Williams? I mean, that first and foremost was bad. We'll talk about the block kicks, but where do you want to start, Travis?
Yeah, I think that let's start where you started. And first of all, the attempt at the grand slam. Here's the thing: Adams should have caught the ball. I mean, they had it. It was there. He was open. Stafford put the ball where he needed to put the ball, and Adams just couldn't hold on to it. I think that's a play that Adams probably makes 9 out of 10 times. Just unfortunately, this was that 10th time that it didn't happen. Now, I think the reason they did, I didn't love the play call at that spot either, but they did get what they were looking for. The problem is you didn't have a play, or at least he thought he had a play on 4th and 1 that he knew he could convert for that first down. And that was the play to me that made no sense at all. Your Bo Limmer is getting annihilated on the offensive line, just getting absolutely gobbled up. He's up there in place of Kevin Dotson, who had to leave the game for a period of time. And you decide that in the most crucial play of the game, you're going to run it behind Bo Limmer? Really?
Why would you run to the right there? I mean, absolutely no sense. He got absolutely manhandled. He was barbecue brisket when Kevin Dotson was going out, and they knew that.
Yeah, no, that was the thing to me that just made me go, what in the world is going on out there? It wasn't the decision necessarily on 3rd and 1. It wasn't the decision to go for it on 4th down right there. I thought it was the right decision. Don't run to Bo Limmer's side of the line of scrimmage. He's getting just killed over there. And, not only did it not work, it was a loss. And the momentum had already started to shift toward Philadelphia at that point in the game. That gave them an incredible lift. the Rams couldn't stop anybody in the second half after that opening drive where Jared Verse got his strip sack. It was a meltdown everywhere. I thought Sean McVay made some mistakes. Like you mentioned, Matthew Stafford missed not one or two, but a handful of open guys over the course of the game. There were some drops. There were some weird calls. Sean, it just everything about that was, one play here or there goes a different way, and that's a win for the Rams. And instead, I would throw it up there. I think it's the worst loss of the McVay era. We've seen him get killed before. We've seen him lose Super Bowls and playoff games, but it's really unusual to see a Rams team just come unglued over the course of a couple of quarters, and that's exactly what happened.
I think you're right. I really do think this was the worst. I agree with you. I mean, as far as them snatching a loss from the jaws of victory, this certainly was that. I mean, they absolutely melted down on so many levels in this one. And what the frustrating thing is, like last year in the division round, they made a lot of mistakes late, but still had the ball in their hands with a chance to win the game late. And I don't know if you remember this, Travis. I was literally on my laptop cutting up the clip from Friday's show. Did you remember my prediction? What was my prediction? Joshua Carty, walk-off field goal. Okay? I was like about to take the biggest victory lap ever. I was going to have to stop for gas and charge my car throughout this victory lap. It was going to be so many victory laps. And of course, they let me down. Here's this crazy thing. Like, Travis, two blocked field goals, two blocked field goals in the same game consecutively. Last year in the NFL, there were 19 blocked field goals for the entire season combined. It was just so improbable there. And just the execution on those ways. Like, Joshua Carty would have got my game ball yesterday because of the ball placement on the kickoffs, because of how he looked. He had the 51-yarder early. I mean, he looked like the real deal, but those aren't missed kicks. Those are blocks, because I don't know if you saw the clip of, just the blocking was terrible.
I'm surprised they didn't just pick it out of Ethan Evans' hands and just run it back the other way, that they even had to block it. I mean, it was a absolute free-for-all up front. It was a disaster. And look, that block kick at the end of the game, and you're right, Doug, to have one is a really bad day. To have two is almost inexplicable the way that it went down. But you turn one of those field goals in the first half into a touchdown, and the game's over. The game was 16-7 at the half, and it was a good half. Don't get me wrong, but it was a half that it should have been 31-7. It should have been over before you even went into the second half, and they didn't score touchdowns in the red zone. They kept kicking field goals, and they were never able to get that, okay, now it's over. It was always, they're in a pretty good spot, but not quite yet. And then Philadelphia scored on their second drive of the second half, right in the third quarter. And that was it. They scored every time they touched the ball after that. They couldn't get a stop. The defense that was lighting people up in the first half couldn't get anything done in the second half. Emmanuel Forbes got abused by A.J. Brown. It was Devontae Smith and Brown started to do what they did. Jalen Hurts, if you said at the beginning of the day, hey, Jalen Hurts has to throw for 300 yards if he's going to beat you, Saquon Barkley was really quiet. They did a great job on him. Do you want that? Every Rams fan would have said, of course I want that. And they lost. I mean, it was just right across the board. Everybody had a hand in one of the more disappointing losses you're ever going to see.
Absolutely. I want to point this out too. Alex Ward, the Rams long snapper, this is not going to be fun for him to see during the film session. Here's him. I don't know if you saw that shot right there. And yes, there were some hands from the Eagles defenders on the long snapper, but I think that you can't blame this on that. I mean, as you point out, this game was lost in the first half when you did not go up like you needed to. As you pointed out, they made Jalen Hurts into a passer, and that always is the plan against the Eagles, is to try to make Jalen Hurts a passer, and he beat them. I mean, the 3rd and 10 played to A.J. Brown where Darius Williams gets cooked for that 25-yard gainer. I mean, things like that. And also just he made throws. I mean, Devontae Smith had a couple really key catches, and then you're able to bottle up Saquon Barkley. I mean, if I told you heading into this one, Saquon Barkley was going to have less than 100 yards, you'd be like, oh, I feel pretty good about the chances. If I told you he's going to have less than 50 yards, you'd be like, oh, cool. So Victory Monday, that's going to be a fun lockdown, right? I mean, less than 3 yards per average, you would take that every day and feel like they won. But I think that if I'm looking at the number one reason why the Rams lost this game, it was not sticking with the run game that was working in the first half. We were averaging 5.2 yards per carry. So you're averaging over 5 yards a carry. What does that tell you? Keep running the football, and all you do is run the football. Probably going to get in the end zone, right? And then you combine that, Travis, with some of those missed throws by Matthew Stafford. And we'll talk about some of those, but I mean, don't you think that this is a Rams team that if you're looking for something to feel good about, it's, hey, Blake Corum looked really good. Some of those cutbacks, Kyron Williams looked really good. You need both those guys. The running game was really good. They just did not capitalize on it early in the game.
No, they didn't, and we can get into that. I thought Corum looked great. I'd like to see him get the ball more, and not because Kyron Williams didn't look good. He looked pretty good too. I thought that was a bright spot for him, to be sure. Look, there are some positives to play. They were literally one play, and I'm not talking about the kick. I'm talking about any one of maybe a dozen different plays goes a different way, and they win that game. The part, though, that I keep coming back to, Doug, and you just kind of touched on it there, is everything that you would have wanted happened, and you still lost the game. That how many times we heard this is a team that's built to play from ahead. You get a 10-point lead with this Rams team, they're going to be able to pin their ears back and go get the quarterback, and they're going to be able to kill clock on offense. And the secondary is not going to matter near as much when you get that great pass rush, as long as you can put them in must-pass situations. They did all of that, and they lost. Like every single thing that you could hope for to put the Rams in a position to succeed. And they have the best head coach in the league. I believe they have the best head coach in the league. I have not changed my opinion on that, but I mean, it just right up and down the line, pick a guy. And there was a problem yesterday in the second half. And by the way, I know we're going to focus a lot on the second half because that's where the thing really came unglued, but I agree with what you said. They lost this game in the first half because they kicked 4 field goals when they had a chance to score. Of those, 3 of those should have been touchdowns. The 51-yarder, that's a field goal that you got to kick. The other ones, those are touchdown opportunities. The Rams are one of the worst teams in the league inside the red zone. They're hitting it under 50% when it comes to scoring touchdowns. That's got to improve.
Yeah, 25% success rate in the red zone, 1 for 4, 3 for 10 on third down, but you gave up just 33 yards in the first half, and you had so many opportunities to score more points. Yeah, 26 unanswered points is that's a meltdown. Like, I hate to use the C word. That was a choke by the Rams yesterday.
It was.
But coming up next, we're going to focus on Matthew Stafford and his performance yesterday. Saw him reaching at that back a couple times, and I know that's pretty much a concern for all of us. But that's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
This episode of Locked On Rams is brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I, we make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right means cashing in. With football back, Prize Picks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Here's what you do. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes all in about less than 60 seconds, right? I've been playing Prize Picks for a long time. It is a fun way to stay locked in for the season. It's quick, it's easy, and honestly, it's my favorite way to follow along with football. Yesterday, I had 2 things, and not my best day on Prize Picks. I had the more than 1.5 touchdowns on Jordan Love. He only got 1. I had less than the 238-yard passing for Matthew Stafford. I did get that one right, but that's Prize Picks, right? You pick more, you pick less. It really is that easy. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 play. Prize Picks. It's good to be right.
And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Okay, Travis, so here in our second segment, let's focus on Matthew Stafford, who I wouldn't say was awful. I wouldn't say he was terrible. It was not a vintage Matthew Stafford afternoon, uncharacteristically missing some throws he typically makes. He finishes the afternoon going 19 for 33, 2 touchdowns, an interception, 196 yards throwing, but it was just the misses in this one. And he overthrew Adams in the red zone. That led to a field goal. He missed Puka Nacua late in that first half. That led to another field goal. And then before that Coleman Sheldon holding penalty, if you look at it, Adams was also open there on this slant. He doesn't hit him, and he throws the ball over his head. So it looked like from a mechanic standpoint, he just wasn't where he needs to be, setting his feet, making and executing throws, grabbed his back a couple times. I don't know if you noticed that. And if Matthew Stafford had, it was probably a C plus B minus Matthew Stafford game. If he gives you a solid B or a B plus, they're walking out of there with a win, and it's not coming down to a blocked field goal at the end of the game.
Yeah, I think that it really depends, and really probably the only person who knows the answer to this is Matthew Stafford and the Rams training staff, if even they know. Maybe it's just Matthew Stafford. Look, if it were just a bad game, okay. It's going to happen, right? If he just missed a bunch of guys because it was one of those days where he misses a bunch of guys, you just mentioned that it wasn't like these were super tight windows. These were guys that by NFL standards were wide open, and he was not able to connect on some of those throws. If it was just I couldn't find my rhythm, my footing, I just wasn't seeing it right. Okay, fine. That actually is not the end of the world. Because I believe that he's going to hit that throw, way more often than he's not. The flip side is that there was something physically preventing him from hitting those throws, whether it was his back. You mentioned you saw that he grabbed for it a couple of times. I saw the same thing. You saw him reaching for his leg a couple of times. I know there was a report that they were working on his calf on the sidelines at one point. Maybe it was cramping. I don't know. But the fear is, Doug, is not just that he had a bad day and missed some guys, which even the very best guys are going to have a day like that once in a while. The fear is there was something physically preventing him from making those throws, that he couldn't step into it or finish or whatever the mechanical issue may be, because there was some sort of pain or injury that was preventing it, because that probably will not just go away. That's something that could linger, something that needs treatment, some time. Now, I don't know what it is. So hopefully when we hear from him next, he said, look, I feel fine. I missed some throws. Good, because if it's something other than that, we're right back where we were at the start of the season, which is, what do you do if because you saw it, right? Matthew Stafford wasn't Matthew Stafford yesterday. It was pretty good. I mean, it wasn't the end of the world, but that felt like a Jimmy Garoppolo game, which is like, yeah, that was okay. It was fine, but we left some stuff out there and they lost. So you're going to need Stafford to be a lot better than that. Yeah,
and I think that's what makes it frustrating, because you're holding him to the Matthew Stafford standard, right? Not the Jimmy Garoppolo or some average to below average quarterback. This is a guy that when the Rams win, he's a big reason why, right? He's the major weapon out there. And I think for me, the Davante Adams and Matthew Stafford, you see the potential there, but it is still a work in progress. I think one of the biggest missed throws, the missed opportunities, Rams are up 13-7. It's the second quarter. They're at the Eagles' 15-yard line. And they're at the point where it's blowout city almost, right? And Davante Adams, he gets wide open. He's on an out route, and Stafford just sails the ball way over his head, and that's on the 3rd and 3. The Rams convert there. I mean, you're going to go score a touchdown, and you're not going to settle for the field goal that they did. There were multiple times in this game where we saw Davante Adams touchdown on a nice just go route, beats his defender, and that's like, wow, that's why you signed this guy, right? That's why he's a massive upgrade. And then there was a couple that hit his hands. I mean, the one that it hit his chest in the fourth quarter, that seals the game. So I think for me, I was kind of talking about this yesterday. With Davante Adams, it's kind of like at this point, you see what he's capable of, right? I don't think that there's any doubt that he can still play that position at a high level. He's not washed or anything like that. He can still make plays. But it's almost like when you get a new girlfriend and everything's great for the first couple of weeks, couple of months, but you got that first fight. Right? This to me is that kind of first fight with your new girlfriend, right? Like, it's just, it's not something serious, right? You just gotta, kind of feel it out, right?
I think so. And I think, okay, I'm going to extend the girlfriend analogy a little bit further, and it probably won't work, but I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to crack my knuckles and I'm going to give it a shot right here. He went running back to his ex. That every time he needed it, he looked for Puka, right? Every big play down the stretch, it was, where's Puka Nacua? I'm going to throw to Puka Nacua. Where's number 12? I'm going to go there. Now, he kept missing him too, but I think there was some information in there that when it got really tight, really tight, and especially on that final drive, and by the way, it worked. They got into field position to kick the game-winning field goal. It was an effective drive. it was almost all Puka. That when he, after the fight, to use the analogy, it's like, all right, fine, I'm going to call her. I'll just go back and I'll start blowing her up too, because he just kept feeding Nakua over and over and over again. And it makes the Rams easier to defend. If you know that when in those gotta have it moments, and that was Cooper Kupp for a long time, right? 3rd and Kupp. We talk about it all the time, that it's going there and it works. And like I said, they got down into a position where they had a very makeable field goal, 44-yard field goal at the end of that game is something that you feel pretty good about. But if I know where the ball is going and I know that I really don't have to defend anybody else other than one, maybe two guys, it's a much easier call for a defensive coordinator. And I think that the Rams showed their cards a little bit by how much they went to Puka in that final drive.
No doubt about it. And even earlier in that game, after that Devontae Adams misconnection on the very next drive, he does go to Puka on 3rd and 2 with the Rams up 13-6 after kicking that field goal. And what happens? Puka Nacua, he's wide open, going across the field on the left side. Stafford throws it. It goes way high over his head. And then you end up kicking another field goal to make it a 19-7 game after that, after they kicked the other field goal. So, I mean, they had him on the ropes. Like, they really did had him on the ropes. And by the way, speaking of Puka Nacua, I want to say this. If you're ever on the road in LA, I know you have a nice commute to work and someone cuts you off. Now, instead of flipping them the bird, make sure you do this. Make sure you do this, because apparently that's the equivalent in the eyes of the NFL. I mean, that was just an absolute embarrassing, ridiculous call. And this was a call that I think impacted the game. After a 20-yard grab where the Rams are at the Eagles' 40-yard line, he was called for a taunting penalty where he just spun the ball, he flexed, and that put the Rams back on their own 45-yard line, and that led to the drive stalling. And you got to that 3rd and 1, that's when you had the Devontae Adams failed pass, and then the stuff on 4th down. I'm not a blame the officials guy, but man, they did definitely. I mean, you saw just so many times yesterday, even on the tush push and things like that. Eagles definitely got some home cooking yesterday.
Yeah, they got a couple, but they also got a couple that went. The Eagles got the same stupid taunting penalty that the Rams did later. And it didn't impact in exactly the same way, but that was a terrible call. I mean, the rule is designed to prevent taunting. That wasn't taunting. That was excitement. That was, I made a first down. I took a big shot. I converted. Let's go. I feel pretty good about that. It wasn't an aggressive act in any meaningful way. It was a bad call, but I don't know, man. The Rams had 200 opportunities to put that game away, and they couldn't do it. They just that was that one of them, sure, but they had plenty more after that to take care of business. So that's down the list of for me the things that matter. That was far more Rams related to me than it was referee related.
Yeah, I'm not blaming the refs guy. I just thought it was. I mean, to beat the Eagles, they were so close. I mean, they had the Eagles on the ropes, and there's a lot of things you could point to as to why they didn't win this game. But as far as things needed to change, Travis, got it?
Well, they scored 6 times in a row. Okay, they scored on 6 consecutive possessions. They only had 26 points. It doesn't work. Like, if you're going to score 6 times in a row, you need to be in the 30s and well into the 30s, if not into the 40s. And I mean, it's just, this was a failure on it's either 3 phases of the game, right? Offense, defense, and special teams. The Rams were great in all 3 phases in the first half and give them A's across the board, maybe a B on offense for not scoring more touchdowns. But in the second half, they were F's across the board in all 3 phases. So, just terribly disappointing.
Absolutely. I mean, you can almost chalk this Rams team success or failure up to the lack of red zone success. I mean, in the postseason a couple years ago, you 0-3 against the Lions in the red zone, you lose. Last year, 2-5 against the Lions early in the red zone, you lose. In some of these big kind of statement game opportunities, it's the red zone execution that kills them. And the Coleman Shelton penalty that took away a potential touchdown. Matthew Stafford missing throws. Sean McVay not being more aggressive with the run. All those things combined. But one thing we got to talk about next is a couple things that really need to change. And that is the Rams not having a third receiver, Tutu Atwell out there doing cardio once again, and the cornerbacks getting cooked late. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
This episode is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, they move culture, and they keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward, unfortunately, I'm going to have to talk about the Eagles here in this moment, was when A.J. Brown converted a 3rd and 10 and picked up 25 yards and threw Darius Williams on the ground in the middle of it. And that was the, this is not good. That was a moment that defined the game. That was a moment that defined the Rams on a Sunday afternoon, right? The Eagles kept themselves moving forward. They kept doing it no matter what. And that was the moment where everything changed in that game. And when you follow what moves you, the unexpected, well, that is only the beginning. It was the beginning of the end for the Rams, unfortunately. And just like there is more to every highlight, there is more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. And let's talk about FanDuel. The NFL season, it's here. We're underway. Final game of week 3 tonight. And FanDuel is making sure that you're ready for kickoff with a can't miss offer, because right now new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. But you can't do it if you don't have the FanDuel app on your phone. I love FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet, right? Player props, FanDuel's got that. Same game parlays, FanDuel's got that, right? Even jumping in live as the action unfolds. Maybe you saw the Rams just hemorrhaging in the fourth quarter yesterday. You want to get in on that? FanDuel has it as well. Makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team, keeping up with your fantasy lineup. Super quick, super easy, and the best way to add just that little more to your Sunday afternoon. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app. Go to FanDuel.com. Getting started now. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. It's not a victory Monday. It's like a miserable Monday. I can't get over this one. This one hurts. And
Doug, it was the worst loss of the McVay era. And let me try to explain what I think that means. We've seen them lose the Super Bowl. That doesn't get much worse than that, but they didn't play well in that game, right? The Patriots had a better game plan. Tom Brady was on the other side, and you lost the game. We've seen them get blown out before. That happens in the NFL. You have a bad day and you get run over. This was an opportunity for them to put themselves at the top of the stack in the NFC. We saw Green Bay lose. All of a sudden, you see the Eagles look vulnerable in Philadelphia. Put everybody on notice that, hey, we have this defense, we have this offense. And instead of that, it's just we're talking about just a collapse of epic proportions. The coaching wasn't right. The defense wasn't right. The special teams wasn't right. Your Hall of Fame quarterback had a bad day. Just across the board, it was just a disaster for the Rams. It was as bad as it's been under McVay.
absolutely. I think you can look at the 2021 Week 18 loss of the Niners. They lose in overtime as a painful loss, but then you avenge that right away by beating them in the NFC Championship game. I said this in the squad show after the game with our guy Michael Brockers and Gavin Carlson, that the Eagles, I think, are becoming the new 49ers for Sean McVay. And that is a team that continues to beat him in different ways, and that he has to prove that he can beat to get another Super Bowl. Because my first thought yesterday was, wow, these teams look like they're on a collision course. And if that's the case, and the Eagles have the season we think they're going to have, and the Rams have the season we think they're going to have, well, this could determine playoff home field advantage. And the last thing I wanted to do is go back into Philly in cold weather and play them instead of having them at SoFi Stadium. So still a lot of football to play to talk about that. But you're absolutely right. I mean, this definitely feels like the worst loss. Having said that, trying to be the eternal optimist here, if you are the Rams and you go into Philadelphia, a game where you're an underdog, and the Eagles did not show up in the first half because of how good your defense was. And hey, one of the big questions, can you handle Saquon Barkley? Poona Ford had a great game. Jared Verse really woke up. The Rams defensive front was getting a lot of pressure early on, and they were making things very difficult for the Eagles. And then the Eagles, think about what they had to do to win this game. They were down 19 with a little over 11 minutes to go in the third quarter, and you had to convert on 4 different fourth down conversions. You had to block 2 field goals. You had to do a lot of things that typically you don't see in an NFL game to win that game. So the Rams were very, very close. I don't think that changes why it's a bad loss or the worst loss in McVay's tenure as a Rams coach. I agree with you. It's the worst loss. But if you are the Rams, to me, what would have been a worse loss yesterday would have if you went up there and you got blown up by 40.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think that if,
I'd say the most painful loss.
Yeah, I think that's a better way. It's the most painful loss because it was one that was easily preventable. It wasn't close. It wasn't close for the entire first half. It just felt like they just completely turned into a different team there in the third and the fourth quarter. And as we get further away from it, by the time we're, getting ready for Indianapolis towards the end of this week, I think that the tone will change a little bit because it's not like when you look, they've obviously lost 3 games in a row to the Eagles. 2 of them have been, gut wrenching. It isn't, we can't beat those guys. It's we let those guys get off the hook. The first game, last season in the regular season, it looked like a mismatch that the Eagles were just way better than the Rams. The last 2 times, that's not what it felt like. It felt like the Rams just missed in the playoffs. And then yesterday, they basically served it up on a platter and said, here, you take it. They can beat that team. They don't need to get a lot better. They got to get a little bit better. They got to clean some stuff up. They got to convert once or twice in that red zone that they weren't able to do. They got to make a better play call on 4th and 1 instead of running behind your 4th guard. It's just there were just a bunch of decisions that even if 1 or 2 of them go a different way, they win that game. And I think the opportunity will become more positive as opposed to the result as we get further away from it.
Yeah, this doesn't change their goals. It really doesn't. And I think for me, if I could pick one positive out of this, as far as just the overall, is I really just being the kind of guy how I like to see rosters managed. I hope the Rams go and aggressively try to pursue some type of cornerback because they're not going to get by. I mean, Forbes, I think, has potential, but you have to let him develop. And Darius Williams, I think, can be a liability at times. You're not going to get a Kello back for a while. Yeah. So that's that. And on tomorrow's show, we'll talk about the lack of a third wide receiver because here's a fun stat from the game. I'm looking at the box score. It says Doug McCain, Travis Rogers, and Tutu Atwell combined for 0 catches yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you just can't have no third wide receiver. And that's definitely an issue. But
well, we'll get into it more tomorrow. The everydayers will certainly get to hear it. That's why you got to be an everydayer. But you can use tight ends more too. Like you got your running backs. You got 2. You got 2 really good running backs. You've got 2 really, really good wide. Maybe 2 of the best in the whole league. You've got it. But there has to be a third option, whether that is not Tutu Atwell, whether that's Jordan Whittington, whether that's Tyler Higbee or Davis Allen, or maybe Terrence Ferguson gets on the field at some point. I don't know. But there's going to have to be a third pass catching option there, and they just don't have it right now.
100%. We'll dive into those tomorrow. More things that need to change. It's going to take a couple episodes to get to this Rams therapy session here, but that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Rams. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. You can follow the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers, at Travis Rogers. And until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.